There is a crisis in the church. People are leaving the Catholic faith in droves. Statistically, the church is growing, but those numbers only count baptisms and confirmations. They don't count the people who have been baptized and confirmed and then leave the church. But if we look at mass attendance, vocations to the priesthood and religious life, and the number of people who consider themselves to be ex-Catholic, we see a different picture. We see a church that is dying. Now, on one hand, we don't have to worry about this. Christ promised the gates of hell would not prevail against his church, and that church is the Catholic Church, period. This has also been predicted through private revelation for centuries. And since those prophecies have been right so far, we can rest assured they are right about what's to come, which is the restoration of the church, the triumph of the Immaculate Heart, and the return to Christendom. But things will get much worse before they get better. So what happened? Why are people leaving the Catholic Church? Of course, the answer is modernism. But more specifically, we've lost our Catholic identity. The Catholic Church looks and acts much different than it ever has. It's almost as if it is a different church. You see, the only thing the Catholic Church can do well is be Catholic. But these days, it seems it wants to be anything but Catholic. They Protestantized the liturgy. They threw out the liturgy that had developed organically over the centuries in favor of an on-the-spot contrived mass designed to appeal to a selfish and rebellious generation, which is now outdated and unappealing to subsequent generations. But since that generation is in charge of the church, they refuse to let go of their hippy-dippy, happy-clappy, kumbaya mass. Old ex-hippies are still in charge of the RCIA program, a post-Vatican II invention where they've replaced sound Catholic doctrine with old, worn-out 60s philosophies that appeal to no one, stressing the importance of climate change, assuring everyone that abortion is necessary in some cases, that the church is wrong and needs to change its teaching on homosexual acts, and how we need to respect other religions because, after all, we're all going to heaven anyway. They watered down the teaching, getting rid of anything that wasn't dogmatic in favor of more modern philosophies. People aren't told why the Catholic Church is important, that it and it alone was established by Christ for the salvation of souls, and that nobody is saved except through the Catholic Church, even those who aren't its members. All grace comes into the world through the Catholic Church. Have you noticed that God's not answering your prayers like he used to? That's because of how sinful the world has become, and because the Catholic Church is much weaker than it was even just a few years ago, restricting the flow of grace to the world. And people aren't being told that they need to confess their sins to a priest, not because he represents the community, but because he has the authority through his bishop given to the apostles to forgive sins, and without it, people go to hell. Our Lady has been reduced to simply teaching the 4 dogmas, and they don't talk about them unless they absolutely have to. All this to please Protestants, thinking it would cause them to convert. But the Protestants don't care. After all this effort, the leaders of Protestantism still spew the same old tired anti-Catholic rhetoric. They're never going to like us, because the whole point to Protestantism is it's not Catholic. And rather than bring Protestants in, all these changes drove the younger generations into their arms, or away from Christianity altogether. If you don't have to be Catholic to save your soul, then why bother? Those other churches are much cooler. And traditional Catholic devotions like praying the Rosary in church, if they'll allow it, and the Stations of the Cross just seem a little out of place in the new Catholic Church. You see, Protestants do it better. Protestants are much better at being Protestants. Protestants know you have to keep changing in order to appeal to the younger generations. The Catholic Church wants to stay in the 1960s and 70s. Now, I'm not saying the Catholic Church needs to get with it and progress to hip-hop masses. What it needs to do is return to tradition, because it is timeless and appeals to generations across the board. Those who are interested in the Catholic Church are interested in the old Catholic Church, the Latin Mass and Thomistic theology, etc. And with this reality becoming ever increasingly obvious and harder to deny, are the leaders recognizing that this experiment was a failure, and perhaps the spirit of Vatican II wasn't the Holy Spirit after all? No. You see, the answer to the problems caused by liberalism is always more liberalism. We didn't go far enough. And so they're doubling down, forcing everyone to like it. As centuries-old churches are being closed due to lack of attendance, and parish boundaries are being redrawn, the growing and thriving Latin Mass communities are being restricted, marginalized, and will eventually be driven underground. But it's all futile. In the end, they will lose because they will die, and the younger generations will take over. You see, people are leaving the Catholic Church because nobody wants this anymore. Nobody wants 60 and 70-something-year-old nuns who don't dress like nuns, practice yoga, cast spells, and constantly talk about the wisdom and teachings of the Buddha. I mean, how are we supposed to know you're a nun if you dress like everyone else? Because you wear a brooch? Nobody even knows what that is. If you didn't want to look and act like a nun, then why did you become a nun? And nobody wants priests who are trying to be cool either. It's cringy. A priest is supposed to be above us, not one of us. But even worse, we're done with the sex scandals and rainbow priests and their clearly rainbow friend who's really involved with the church, and the Susans from the parish office and her, quote, roommate who wears jeans, flannel shirts, work boots, sports a buzz cut, and really likes women's basketball. We're done with the rainbow stuff. Get it out of the church. It has no place here. We're tired of folk guitars, tambourines, holding hands and giving peace signs. We're tired of the corny priest joke before his boring homily, the ugly churches, resurrexifixes, and other modern art, what little art is allowed. We want our statues back. We want Gregorian chants ad orientem, altar rails, communion on the tongue while kneeling, traditional Catholic teaching from the pulpit, as well as the classroom, and Latin. What people want is authentic Catholicism. Stands the test of time, created Western society, hard teachings, true Catholicism. And they're going to get it eventually. We just have to wait these guys out. Yes, the old hippie church has lost its luster, if it ever had any, and they know their time is running out. As their arthritis-riddled hands bitterly cling to the felt banners, the young people want the traditional Mass, the Mass of the ages, with all its beauty and splendor. The young priests want to say the traditional Mass, so the old cronies are forbidding it. But it doesn't matter, even that they're in all the positions of power, because eventually they will be gone, and those young priests will become the bishops, cardinals, and popes of the church, and they will set things right, giving back to the church its heritage, saying never again. The church will be much smaller then. Those who are currently running the church will have inflicted much damage, which is being done on purpose, by the way, but so will the population. The people in charge of and who are trying to destroy the church are the same people in charge of and trying to destroy our society, and they are leading us to a very destructive world war. They will succeed at destroying our society. They will not succeed at destroying the church. And those brave, traditional-minded men will not only have to rebuild the church, but also society itself. And it will be Christendom that they give us, with even more splendor than before. So take heart, pray the rosary, and wear the brown scapular, because we will win eventually. Until my next video, God bless.